Welcome back. Thank you guys for being here. At my count, at least, this is week number 7. That's fun to do. So thank you for being here. My name is Brock. I'm the lead care and support pastor here at Hope Fellowship, and get the privilege of being involved with ReEngage. If you are in groundwork or looking to get involved in ReEngage, just please, when this video is completed, or even now, you can pause the video, I guess, and send me an email, Brock, B-R-O-C, at hopefellowship.net, and I can get you connected to this process. But if you want to just keep watching these videos, that's great too, but we'd love to work more closely with you. And so we started our groundwork group last week here, done virtually, and I think it went pretty well. And so we'd love to have you join us for that if you haven't yet gone through ReEngage the process. And so I know last week we did an interview, and so some of you were very, very disappointed about there was no social distancing observations that were given last week as we continue to navigate through the season of COVID-19 and staying at home. So I have a few social distancing observations here for you today, for those of you that were so concerned about that not happening. For me, I'm concerned in my observation about the men's pant industry. Okay, here's the reason why. Because normally I'm a guy that wears jeans, chinos, some dress pants, slacks. I wear those, but ever since this thing happened, we've been working from home. And by the way, have you noticed that now working from home is just abbreviated WFH, working from home. And so that's kind of the new way to look at it. And so for those of you that are WFH people, I have not worn chinos, jeans, in a while now. It's shorts and sweatpants continually. So I'm worried about the pant business, except for the sweatpant business. I'm not worried about them at all. And also I've noticed a little observation here is that I don't know if it's just because we're starved for new entertainment, but it seems like some of the world's greatest documentaries have happened during this time. One, Tiger King. Yes, I did watch it. That was crazy. But more importantly, The Last Dance, the story of the 90s Chicago Bulls. That was when basketball was really fantastic. And again, we may be starved for entertainment, and that's maybe why these are coming out so great. But these are great observations. And the other observation, this is not a social distancing observation, but have you watched The Last Dance, and have you noticed how many berets that Michael Jordan wore, different styles of berets on his head? I'm waiting for him, and maybe for me, to wear a raspberry beret. Sorry, another 90s, maybe even earlier reference. So one of the things we're asking you to do, back to marriage, which I'm sure some of you are like, come on. One of the things we're asking you to do is to do a lot of mental shifting. And I make sure I pronounce shifting in the right way so far in all this. And so one of the things we've discovered is this only is possible to think about marriage in a different way is through connecting with God and giving the supernatural strength to do that. And by you being extremely healthy. One of the things that was interesting about my story, and it might relate to everyone's story, is that when we grow up, we develop coping mechanisms on the way we think we should handle life because of maybe hurts or pains that have come our way. And so we develop ways to get through life that sometimes are more survival ways or more self-protecting ways, but it's helping us get through life. And so I thought that I had to muster up my own strength to do all these right things to be godly. So I would try to be godly, really, really diligently try, and I would fail. I would try again, and I would fail, and then try again and fail. It was this endless cycle of wanting to do good, wanting to be a good person, maybe even in marriage, and not having the skills or the strength to do that. And so it's kind of like I was asking, like a car. If you own a car, you may not be using it much these days, but if you have a car, and it's when the car starts to break down, it's like going to the car and say, hey, car, I'm not happy that you've broken down. You need to just not be breaking down anymore. So just can we step it up a little bit? And the car can try, and it's going to fail again. But the things that I realized about my life, there were just some things, some parts, maybe some items of the car that were missing because I'd never learned or acquired those items. And so, of course, the car's not going to run at the level it should. And even realizing, too, as part of that car, that there were some things that maybe were even broken down or not working properly, and they needed some repair, needed some healing. And so I didn't have the ability to fix that car myself. I only have one person that can do that, and I'm sure he's watching tonight, so my mechanic, Chuck. But the rest of us probably can't do that. And so I had to go to God and say, I need some help, and to go to others and say I needed some help. And I believe, again, this is the story of every human being. Because if you're watching this video, even if you're not watching this video, there's something that is wounded or hurt about you. And there's something that we need healing, we need guidance, we need strength. We can't just have it all figured out intuitively how to do life correctly. And so my question, I guess, for me and for you is, if we can't bring this process to healing on our own, what are you doing, or where are you going to process your past and your hurts and your wounds? Because we can't figure that out on our own. There might even be some pieces missing that we don't even know go there. So where are you going to process your past? And I think one of the signs of being really healthy and being able to do anything we can do in marriage is, again, by that concept of drawing the circle around ourselves and saying, what can I do? Not just to do the right things, but to be the healthiest person I can be. Because if we're not healthy, it's very difficult to do all the things right that God is calling us to do. So I think healthy people do things like go to counseling. Healthy people do things like go to regeneration and figure out why they do what they do. Healthy people are people that seek out a mentor, someone to guide them and lead them in how to do things. And healthy people seek out community where they can get the influence of others. So no processing, I believe, of our past and our hurts and our wounds, then no growth, no process. But if you are in this to say, I want to have a healthy marriage, then my question for you and for me is, where are we going to process those things from our past? So today's topic, I want to look, again, that was a very long introduction. I apologize for that, but it leads into what we're going to talk about. And so I do a lot of weddings. And so I am always out, giving people their vows that they say. And so the vows always intrigue me as I begin to think about those, and they make a lot more sense and have a lot more meaning than they probably did 25 years ago when I said them, and I was just excited about that day. But I just pulled some vows out of a wedding I just did, and it reads this. Their names were Keith and Amanda. It says, Keith, do you take Amanda to be your wife, to live and love with her, to serve her, to honor her, to comfort her in sickness and in health, and to remain faithful to her as long as you both shall live. That's an interesting statement there. Remain faithful to her as long as you both shall live. And we live in a society that kind of doesn't always value that last statement, but yet we continue to make that vow. I'm a big fan of church history, which is a very nerdy thing to say, but one of the things that I think is interesting about the Catholic Church is they have what's called sacraments, the 7 sacraments that they offer as special opportunities for grace to come to the believer. And so marriage is one of those things, and it's considered a sacrament. And if you go back and you look at the origin of the word sacrament, it comes from the Greek word, which actually means mystery. There's something mystical. There's something we can't explain here. There's something that's happening here. And so when it comes to theology, I'm kind of a big mystery guy. And I believe there's a lot of things we can try to explain and try to have in a nice linear fashion, but there's some things that are just unexplainable. And somehow, when we get married as Christians, that's why there's something mystical that happens, or that's why it's called a sacrament in the Catholic Church, because God mysteriously, and Scripture backs this, and I'll read it in just a moment, God mysteriously joins people together as one, which is strange. It's also a sign of God's love and commitment to us, that he's showing us that as you love this person, I'm teaching you how to love the world, but I'm also showing you my love for you. And I think there's really beauty there. And so if you are watching this video, you're married most likely. And so you and I are part of this mysterious event where God joined us together with this person and made us one and said, this is a person that I'm going to give you grace to love and to learn to grow with. And you and I both have made those vows of this is a lifelong commitment of faithfulness to this person. So the question is, how do we live that out? So to back that up, just from the scriptures real quickly, just a couple verses here. Matthew chapter 19, verses 4-6 says this. And this is Jesus talking, and he says, haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. This is a great mystery, how God has joined them together. And so it's interesting, as we view our marriage relationships, we typically view them this way. And we've talked about this before, kind of that idea of the God-centered spouse versus the spouse-centered spouse. But we kind of have this idea that we give, and we should probably get something in return in our marriages. We have this idea that if we love someone, they should probably love us back. If we sacrifice for someone, that down the road, they probably should sacrifice back for us. And so basically it comes down to, if we do our part, they should do their part. And if it gets too one-sided in a marriage, where we feel like we're doing the majority of the giving, the majority of the loving, the majority of the forgiving, whatever, Then we start to either have the typical responses of either fight or flight. We want to battle out or we want to leave. And most people are either fight or flight, but I unfortunately in typically both, which kind of stinks. But that's how we view marriage. That's how we view relationships. But God typically views life and relationships like this: that I give, God says, you receive. I love, you receive. I sacrifice, you receive. You don't deserve, but you get. He is the major giver, and in time goes by, then we start to respond to that gift of grace and that giving that God has given us, and we start to then extend that grace to others. And for those of you that are theological nerds like myself, I realize there's exceptions throughout Scripture of extreme disobedience for that, but that's generally the major way God responds. Is He's the initiator, He's the one that cares, He's the one that gives. So really what this means, and kind of a touching point for this whole thing, is that our vows mean this. I'd like for you to picture if you were in a room, a big circular room, and there's all kinds of doors around the room that are open and opportunities. And so that room represents our current marriage relationship, the marriage relationship we are in right now. And these doors can have different meanings. There might be a door that means not fulfilling those vows and just leaving. I'm just kind of tired. I want something else. There's another door that might mean not fulfilling those vows and just going emotionally or physically to someone else. There might be a door that kind of looks like, hey, I'm going to keep these vows, but I'm going to disengage from this relationship, and I'm going to invest into hobbies, invest into work, invest into my children even, or other areas of interest. There might even be another door that's kind of like, hey, I'm going to keep my vows, but I'm just not going to try to grow this thing. I'm just going to remain here and kind of live as roommates to some degree. But if you remember the vows we spoke with all those doors that are open, at the end of that, it says to remain faithful to her as long as we both shall live, to love her, to honor her, to serve her, to love him, to honor him, to serve him. And so our vows typically mean then, if we look at that room full of doors, is we go around and we shut all those doors. And we say, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to invest in other hobbies or work or things. I'm going to shut all those doors. And the one thing that really matters is what is in this room. That is what I'm going to invest in. We say, I am not leaving, even if my definition of kind of things, if I feel like it's a little one-sided and I'm doing a lot of the work, or if I'm doing some of the things right now, if I'm the one that is working really hard to make things happen and I don't see that for my spouse, we're shutting those doors and saying, I'm going to invest in this relationship. So my encouragement for all of us today is, so especially as we go through this process of ReEngage and we kind of look at our marriages, is that we close all those doors. And we said, this is the primary relationship that God wants me to focus on. And this is the relationship that God really wants there to be thriving so that can kind of translate to the world. So how do we close those doors in closing? Number one, I think we keep connecting with God, because the whole point, I think, of all this is we need that supernatural strength. We need God to give us the strength to love and to serve Him and to serve others. So it might be a prayer a day. Say, God, I need your help. That's a simple kind of prayer. He hears that. It might mean that we listen to a worship song or two here and there to remind our souls that God is in control. A good book about walking with Him. It might be reading the Bible a little bit. Remember, I said my mom used to tell me kind of strangely that a chapter a day keeps the devil away, but just something where we're connecting with God. The second thing is, I think what we have to do is we have to be, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, on a relentless pursuit of finding healing within ourselves. We have to be on a relentless pursuit to make peace with our past. And until we do that, it's going to have a lot of control over us. Counseling, regen. One of my friends, Todd Mead, who's a counselor, says if you want to be a godly man, you hang around godly men. So we need community. If we want to be a godly woman, you hang around godly women and kind of learn from others what it means, because none of us have all those parts in that car. There might be some things that are broken, all of us. And we have to get help to fix those things. We can't do that on our own. And the third thing I'd like to encourage you to do is to really look at some of those doors that might be open and see if you can ask for God's strength and the help of these other people to shut those doors. And that might mean there might be someone that you're texting. There might be someone that you're having some phone calls with, someone at work. To shut that door. It's not worth it. The pain that causes family, the pain that causes spouses. If there's someone that you're engaging with on social media like Facebook or Twitter or wherever it is that maybe is moving toward that inappropriate or that emotional connection zone, to shut that door. If you find yourself leaving all the time or going out to hobbies or different things, so how can you engage and maybe do something like re-engage and re-engage with your family, re-engage with your spouse, and shut those doors and say, I'm going to make this relationship work. I'm going to learn. I'm going to get that car fixed. I'm going to do what I can do to make sure that this relationship is a priority and honors God in that. And so I believe this mentality of shutting the doors has eternal ramifications because we're honoring God, but it also has very temporal ramifications in the sense that we're honoring our marriages today. And it helps us then, this mentality helps us to focus and go where we need to go. And so I pray for you and for me that we would close those doors. We would have a trust in God and we'd pursue Him. We'd pursue relentlessly pursuing our health so that we can give health to other people. Thank you guys for being here. Again, if you're in groundwork or would like to check out ReEngage, please email me, brock@hopefellowship.net. If you're in a closed group, I pray that this video will help you close some of those doors and honor God. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of the day.